Hey guys, Phil Baumhart here. So for today's video I've got this custom S-guard that's almost finished. It basically just needs the final edge, but before I do that I'm going to go ahead and make the sheath for it. And I've had enough requests for seeing how I build my knife sheaths that I figured I'd do a build video for the making of the sheath for this knife. So sometimes I'll have the knife completely sharpened before I do the sheath, but in this case it is just a little bit safer to leave it dull, because I have all the dimensions that I need right here. So first thing I do is I take some graph paper. I've already got this taped together to make it long enough, but I'll fold it in half, and that'll kind of give me the center line for the knife. And then with the flat guard I can just snug it up to the paper here, so that's nice and easy. With a curved guard I'll trace the shape of the guard on it. But now I have where the knife is going to sit, and so I'll just trace this out. And then we'll go ahead and do the welt. I like to have a pretty generous welt. Okay, I just had the SD card die there, but I just traced out the rest of the welt freehand. Most of this false edge is probably going to sit within the fold of the sheath, so now that I have that traced out I can go ahead and just cut it out. And I'm going to again be generous with the cuts here. Fold this over and trace the reverse. So now we can see the knife will fit in there just like that. So now we can go ahead and just trace this onto our leather. And this is a 7 to 9 ounce double shoulder from Tandy Leather. I just get my stuff from Tandy or Weaver Leather. And so we'll just lay it out. I like to go with the grain of the leather. Alright, so we got that. Now that this is traced out, we'll cut out our welt and cut that out of the leather as well. Let's go ahead and get these cut out. I got this plastic backer. Actually does help in aiding with the cutting, because you have this kind of hard backer that you can cut into without damaging your knife. I've just got this Opinel number 2, I think it is, that I use for all my straight cuts on leather. There's other leather cutting knives, but this is just what I had. This is just what I use. It's a nice thin knife, so it gets the job done. And then for the curves, I've got a X-Acto knife blade. And we just follow out our pattern here. Take our leather, fold it over, and then for the mouth of the sheath, I've got this edging tool, and we'll just put a little bevel on the edges. That kind of cleans up the raw cut lines from the knife. Also gets rid of our pen marks. Got this little tool, I forget exactly what it's called off the top of my head, but it basically just takes a little tiny circular piece of the material out, like so, and just sort of makes a little engraved line, which aesthetically kind of helps define the borders of the sheath and all that. So I'm actually a pretty big fan of it. And so at this stage we could actually, if you want to keep it a plain sheath, we could glue it up and call it good. But I'm going to do some engraving on this. So we're going to wet this down and we'll do some stamping on the leather. So what I'm going to do is I've got this set at the widest setting, and we'll go ahead and make a engraving mark. And this will kind of define the border of our engraving. I'm just going to spray down the entire outside of this where we're going to do our engraving. And we'll give that a moment to soak in. You actually don't want to start hammering on this right away. You kind of got to give the leather a chance to soften up. Okay, so I've got two tools I'm going to be using for the border. I have this, I think they call it a fan tool, and I forget off the top of my head what this guy is called, but this will just kind of fill in the gaps in between this this fan tool here. So I'm going to start on the corner because we're going to see that. Line that up, give it a smack with the rubber mallet, and we have a nice little engraving. And then what we're doing with this tool here is we're putting it kind of where the two points meet. Light little tap. And we have a simple but fancy looking design. And you want to use a rubber mallet for this, because these things are pretty cheap and they'll mushroom over if you use metal. Don't ask me how I know. And we're just gonna carry this design down the border. Okay, now at the very end of the sheath I don't have enough room, so I've got this sunburst tool. And I think I want to use that guy right there. Yeah, that looks nice. And we'll just complete it with the fan. We'll take this, I think this is the seed tool is what it's called. We'll add a little guy inside of the sunburst, like so, and then we're just going to go through and do all the little connection points here. And it's clear to me now that putting the tripod on the table was not the smartest move for a leatherworking video. But we are committed now. Alright, so we got all of our engravings on there, and then we're going to just let this dry and then we'll get it glued up. Okay, and now to glue this up, I'm going to use my barge cement. So we'll do a nice liberal dose on one side and get the other. And the leather's just a little bit wet, so to keep the impression of the clamp from getting onto here, I'm going to use scrap leather here to just sort of pat it. Alright, there we go. So we'll just let this dry. Alright, so the sheath is now dry. So I'm just going to lightly sand this. I got an old 36 grit belt. I'm just going to clean up all the edges and make everything flush to get ready to do the holes for the stitching. So we got the edge of the sheath all smoothed out, so we're just going to trim this kind of flash with the edging tool. And now we're going to mark in the stitching line. Start here. Now we'll get it over on the drill press and put in our stitching holes. Now you can see the by sanding it even on both sides, that the holes line up on the other side with the groove that we've made. So I always drill from the display side, so I know that it lines up. You know, when you're wearing the sheath and it's facing out, you know, all the stitching looks nice and even. Check it periodically, make sure that I'm still lined up properly. Okay, so we got our holes drilled, so now we'll go ahead and sew this up. So what I use for my knife sheaths is this number 6 bank line. So this is the thinnest bank line option. It's good strong stuff, looks good. It's very strong, water resistant, UV resistant, all that good stuff. Fits the aesthetics of the sheath as well. And so I generally take about 3 times the length of the sheath. And I find that that gives me enough to do the entirety of the sheath with enough spare that I can tie it off at the end. So start at the back here, and I'll just jam it in between the welt and find that first hole. Just tie a little stop knot in the back of this, and then fuse it off so it doesn't fray. Pull that through, and then just a little bit of pressure, pull that knot into the welt so it's recessed in there and hidden. And then we'll just go through all the holes. So this is just the way I do it. I know there's different techniques for stitching, like using 2 needles and all that, but I just take the 1 needle and do the length of one side, and then come back and do the other side. So I kind of pull it tight and hold it down so I get a nice snug fit. And that groover, you know, not only kind of guides the pilot holes, if you will, but then when you pull this line taut, it sits kind of recessed in that groove and isn't jutting up and sitting on top of the leather. Alright, so we've gotten to the top of the sheath, so just pull that through, And then we're going to double back and go the other way and complete our line of stitching. And then at the very end, we're going to run this back up into the welt. And that's actually just about perfect where it comes in between the two pieces of leather. We pull that tight as we can, and I just do a couple of overhand knots to kind of secure that and keep it from getting pulled back through. Yeah, so there we go. We got a nice big knot. Snip off our excess. Fuse this bit here. Pinch that off, and then we'll just take this knot, jam it down into the welt. Yeah, so once we have that good and buried, that leather will kind of squish around that, and then when we go to burnish this, it'll basically seal all that off. There you go. Alright, so we got our sheath all sewn up and we're ready to stain it. Okay, now for staining the sheaths, I still like to use raw linseed oil. As you can see, I've had this bottle a little bit, so it's a little gnarly looking. You know, I buy the big gallon size and then put it into this. So just got one of the, you know, wool daubers, and we'll just give this a good liberal coating. And when the leather is raw like this, it soaks it up pretty quickly. So I give it a few minutes to dry in between coats. And getting a good base layer of this linseed oil down seems to go a long way as far as the depth and richness of the color when I do the stain. I usually like to burnish the edges after the entire staining process is done as well. And it's important to get oil into all of the engravings as well. Hit our welt here. So we've got a pretty good color here. When this fully dries, it'll actually get pretty light. I'm going to put on some antique dark brown finish from Fibuling's dye. And this is kind of their, it's a very thick paste. They also have kind of a gel version, but I've found that can be a little bit difficult to work with at times, as far as not getting it to smear. But I found this to be a pretty good alternate to birch oil, which, you know, if you've followed my channel and watched my other videos before, you know that I'll make my own birch oil and use that to stain sheaths. But birch oil can sometimes, you know, depending on how it comes out, it can have a tendency to dry kind of smeared on the leather and doesn't look very good. So it's always kind of tricky to get it right, especially with the stamp work. I found this stuff works really good for just getting into all the nooks and crannies and really makes those stampings pop. And so at this point, I'll get more linseed oil on here, and this kind of helps dilute that stain, thin it out, get it to soak into the pores of the leather. So I'm not 100% sure how the manufacturer intends you to use this antique dye, but since I did this kind of linseed oil process with the birch oil, that's what I did with this. I found it worked pretty darn good. So we got that side, and now we'll do the other side here. So I kind of hit the edges first because that's where you need the most stuff. and I take that excess and smear it onto the body of the sheath. And I'm using my hands for this part because if you use the wool dauber, it'll kind of lift some of that dark dye from the leather, and especially on smaller pieces, it won't come out, you know, as dark as you may want. Dipping my finger in the linseed and then rubbing it all over. Just seems to work the fastest. You know, you can use the heat from the friction, and it really works everything in. You can see it soaks in pretty quick, dries pretty quick, and I just kind of keep going back over it and working these smears out. I laid it on a little bit heavy. This is a brand new can of this dye, but as you can see, little goes a long way. We're looking in pretty good shape now. Okay, so here's what our sheath is looking like. I'm going to cut out a few extra pieces here. So I have a pattern for the belt loop, essentially, that'll fit like this. Loop that over and sew it up, so that way the stitching on the belt loop isn't exposed to the blade inside the sheath. I've found that is kind of imperative for not accidentally cutting the stitching on your belt loop. And then I'm going to have another little piece here that's going to be where the leg tie down strap is going to go through, for sort of the gunslinger style of Bowie knife sheath. Because what I found with these bigger Bowies is that when you're wearing them on their hip, you know, they're going to want to kind of flop around and move around a lot as you're walking, and having the little leg tied down not only looks cool, it makes it feel like Han Solo, but it also just sort of secures it to your leg. I'm doing this belt loop extra long because I like having the mouth of the sheath well below the belt loop, so that when you go to re-sheath it, it's a little bit easier. You don't have to contort yourself as much, because again, with these longer blades, it can be a little difficult to get back in the sheath, and you don't risk stabbing yourself in the belly or anything. It's a nice, easy way to kind of accomplish that. Do a complementary pattern on this as well. And I'm purposely cutting this a little bit longer than the measurement I need, and I'll trim it down once I have it secured to the sheath. And this is the same double shoulder, that 7 to 9 ounce leather, which seems to be a good sweet spot between stiffness and flexibility. I like to try to do a little curved radius on these corner points as well. Gotta make sure not to have the cut overhang, because it looks bad. So we'll just loop that over like that and sew that down, and that should give us a good long belt loop. And so these grooves will be where we put in our stitching for our belt loop. And I like to do kind of a secondary line a little bit higher up. We'll start with our fan tool. And put in my little connector points here. much lighter blows. This is easier to just sort of drive it straight through the leather when it's soft and wet like this. You don't have to go too far up into here because that'll be covered by the belt loop anyways. Okay, so before we go ahead and sew this up, we'll just stain it. It's easier to stain just kind of into your belt loop portion before it's all sewed up. I'm able to get a little more consistent finish on it as well. And we're going to put a little more decoration on there. I'm going to put a concho and a blood knot on there. So I'll show you how I do that. And then for the dye on this, I'm going to use this Fibuling's vintage gel. So versus this antique dark brown finish, which is more of like a paste, this is a gel, so it's a lot sloppier. So sort of a tough proposition, but you can see that's, well, you'll see in a second how kind of liquid it is. So the key is to just sort of rub this in fast. If you let it sit, or if you put it on too heavy, it seems to streak as it dries, and obviously looks terrible. So just get this on, and this goes into all the nooks and crannies on the stamp work and really helps make that pop. Make sure we get all of our edges. So it does have a little, it does give a little bit different quality to the leather stain, which I think will be an interesting contrast. But hopefully I'll be able to show you the difference as far as the two different, as far as the two different types of stain goes. I'm going to actually try to wipe some of this off, and hopefully that'll help prevent the streaking before it dries. Yeah, there we go. I just use my hands for applying this, but this stuff does stain your fingers pretty bad. So if you need your hands to look presentable, you know, a day or two or the same day that you're using this, you might want to wear gloves. And there you go, pretty quick and simple. So we'll let this dry, and then we'll get our belt loop sewn up. Alright, so leather is dry. It actually dries fairly quickly, and it actually gives it kind of a kind of hardens up the surface of the leather, oddly enough. And here's what our sheath body is looking like, so you can kind of see the color difference. So this will wrap around like this. We'll put a couple of rivets through there to secure it, and the belt loop will go like this. I have to stain this part as well. And here's what our concho looks like. So we'll throw that on there and hold that on with what's commonly called a blood knot. This is my blood knot pattern. Thin strap, pointed ends. It's got the two slits in there, and that's how it kind of weaves into itself. So, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I'm going to get out a good piece cut out, and I'm probably going to do some stamping and stain that as well. Okay, so our little piece of strap leather here is dry, so go ahead and stain it up. Slap some linseed oil on there. Got the spot marked out where the concho is going to go, so let's go ahead and cut that out right now. Okay, so that should be good. keep this about even, maybe a touch longer on the display side. Now we'll thread our concho in there, like so. I'm going to mark where my slits are going to go. And one slit there, one slit there. So now the underside one is going to get pulled through the top slit. Now I'll take the bottom one, and this will end up on the top, and we're going to put this through the other slit. There we are. Pull that through like that. Make it nice and flat. And there we have it. Put a little stain on this here, darken that up. Okay, so now for the belt loop, I've got it folded over, clamped just to hold it in place. We've got our grooves marked where I want the threading to go. So it's our same fine drill bit. I think this is a 3/32 with this number 6 bank line. We'll just drill out our holes. Okay, so now we can go ahead and sew this up. So we'll start on the inside here to kind of hide the knot. Okay, so again, once we've completed one row of stitching, we kind of just go back the other way so that we have a solid line of bank line. And you can see that doing that groove in there, the thread just gets pulled tight into it so it sits flush, and it'll help protect it as it's being worn, so you won't wear through your stitching. Now we have the triangle completed. We'll just go up to that secondary line and complete that. And that way you just sort of have a kind of an extra line of defense for keeping your stitching secure. And then with this kind of separate, you know, belt loop system riveted to the sheath, and for me at least has been kind of the most durable sheath method. So ran out of memory on the SD card, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. Got this tied off the knot, melted it. So with the bank line, the hard bank line, you just melt the whole thing, flatten it, and so that knot will never come undone, and it's nice and flat. And so you can see how that'll fit on there. Got the belt loop centered, the concho is centered, and then we'll put our rivets in that'll hold the belt loop to the sheath itself. So I'm going to get this clamped up so that'll kind of hold it in place. And then I can feel the welt. We're going to use some brass rivets here. Find where we want our holes to be. So right about there. And right about there. Cool. And I'm still well within the welt, so we'll just go through here and ream these holes out. those on, put those through our holes, make sure it's lined up nice and tight, push down on those, and that shows us right where our hole needs to be. Okay, so we got the other ends of our rivets here, the hollows. We'll line these up with the stems. These are cutlery rivets. I think I got these from like knifekits.com. I believe they're meant for handles. You rivet your handles on and then grind off the burr. But I found they work well for leatherworking, so that's what I do. Seems to work out well. So. Okay, so we got that lined up. I used to just try hammering these in and trying to hammer them flat and even. But what I've found is using the vise actually works really well for cinching this all together. So let's get this over to the vise and we'll give it a shot. I'm going to do these one at a time. And hopefully it'll cinch in nice and even. Alright, there we go. 2 for 2. Looking nice and even. So now we can trim off our excess leather now that we got this bolted in. Just take our knife and follow the line of the sheath. There we go. I like to re-groove it and kind of match up the stitching groove and the other groove just for a little more cohesion. So we fucked that up. That's cool. Fantastic. Okay, so that was a fun little faux pas. So I used the edging tool to kind of just clean that off. So now we're going to re-stain it. There's the other sides. I don't know what it's supposed to look like, but that was not really what I wanted to have happen at all. Naturally, after we have this thing bolted on is when it all goes horribly wrong. But we'll see if we can salvage victory from the jaws of defeat. I'll just layer linseed oil onto the rest of the sheath. We'll go ahead and get our belt loop here while we're at it. Okay, so I think that cleaned up pretty well. That's how it's looking. So mistakes will happen, and at a certain point you just gotta try to salvage them as best you can. So here's our leg tie down portion, and we have that. We have this cut, longer than needed, and that is intentional. Marked on this. Okay, so we'll go ahead and make our rivet holes for the leg tie down attachment. And again, this is through the welt. The welt stops about here, right at my thumbnail, so there's plenty of room there, and there's no risk of the blade of the knife hitting those brass rivets and dulling the blade when you sheath the knife, because that's very important. We'll go ahead and mark our back side. Make sure that's all lined up. Give it a little pressure. I'm going to make a couple slits for where our belt loop is going to go. So we'll go right there and right there. Okay, so we've got a 3/4 inch slit tool that I'll use for making this. Alright, so we're pretty much done now with the sheath itself. Just got to do the leg strap and also burnish the edge. Just take a wet dauber here, go over the entire edge here. Okay, so we got our cut some leather. This is some 4 to 6 ounce thinner leather. That's going to be for the leg tie down. So just got it cut out. So we'll edge it and then I'll wet it down and stamp it. Alright, there's what it looks like. So just let this dry, we'll stain it, and we'll get a buckle on this end. Alright, so we got our strap here and a copper buckle. This is the antique copper look. Thought I had some antique brass, but guess I am out right now. So we're just going to cut a little slit and get this riveted on. We got a little copper rivet here we'll throw on. This is one of the Tandy rapid rivets. Okay, so here's what the strap's looking like, all dyed up, so in good shape there. So we'll go ahead and thread that into our loop here. And I got these pair of forceps that works really well for this. Just open up our hole there, thread this in, and I can pinch it with this. There we go. And we'll just pull that through. And I'll probably just go through and make holes for the buckle holes, probably starting right about here, so that way you can kind of wrap it around the sheath, buckle it in, and then wrap around the rest of the way. And you know, I've made this intentionally extra long. I'm not sure how big a leg they got, so you can always cut it down, but you can't make it longer, or you know how much clothes they're wearing or what they want to do with it. So I just think longer is better. That's what she said. And I just have a single hole punch tool. I'm not exactly sure what the size is on it, but got it at Handy Leather, and it's the right size for this buckle. That's all I know. So we'll do every 1, 2, 3, I think. Every third pattern. Put a little hole. And for the final step, I've got some Leatherworking leather conditioner. This is a mixture of pine pitch, mink oil, and beeswax. American made. So you can also use acrylic resin if you want kind of a shinier finish. But this gives it a nice kind of a satin finish, and then it's just like an extra layer of you know, protection. And just like leather boots or anything else, you know, you just oil the sheath periodically with the Leatherworking leather or whatever the leather conditioner of your choice is. Just put this on the entirety of the sheath and we'll be good to go. Get it on the welt. You can see how it kind of just darkens that up, shines that up, makes it look nice. Got this all oiled up. We're good to go there. So now we can just do a little wrap to secure the leg tie. So you can also do the wrap and then run this through, but just for storage sake, we'll do it like this. And now we have a complete scabbard. And I got the blade sharpened up, so let's see how she fits. There we go, one finished scabbard. Alright, so here's what the sheath looks like when it's on the body. The belt loop strap hangs down low enough that you can draw the knife fairly easily, and then putting it back away. Don't have to do a whole lot of straining to get it back in. It's tougher with winter clothes on, but you can definitely get it done. But you can see the straps a little bit long there. So if this was mine, I might cut it down. I'll just leave it long for the customer, just to have it tucked in there. It keeps the knife from flapping around too much when you're walking around. Just sort of lets it hug to your body, which I kind of like better. So with these longer knives, they'll kind of flap around or bang against your thigh if they don't have this thigh strap here. But you know, definitely has that gunslinger cowboy vibe to it. So personally, I like it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I appreciate you watching. If you want your own Blackheart custom knife or sheath, I got links in the description box for the Etsy web store, so you can find me on there. I can help you out figuring out what you want. Also links to my Instagram and Facebook on there as well if you want to keep up with my latest and greatest works. But that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, be more Viking.